Queen Zara lived on a beautiful planet called Aetherios Prime, far away in space. She wasn't like the queens we know from fairy tales. She was actually an alien who had been ruling her people for over 1,000 years. Can you imagine being a queen for that long? Most humans don't even live that long. Her planet was amazing. Picture floating gardens in the sky, cities made of crystal that sparkled like diamonds, and waterfalls that flowed upward instead of down. The people there, called Aetherians, had special powers. They could read minds and talk to each other without saying a word. They also lived much longer than humans do. But being queen came with a big price. When Zara became queen, she had to make a promise called the Sacred Vow. This wasn't just any ordinary promise you make to your friends. This was something that changed her body and mind forever. She promised never to fall in love or get married. The idea was that if she focused only on ruling, she would be the best leader possible for her people. The promise wasn't just words written on paper. Aetherians had advanced technology that actually made the promise part of her body. It was like having invisible chains around her heart that stopped her from feeling romantic love. For 1,000 years, she had lived alone in her palace, making decisions for millions of people but never having someone special to share her life with. Why did they have this rule? Well, the Aetherians had been through many wars over the centuries. They learned that when their leaders got distracted by love and family, sometimes they made bad decisions that hurt their people. So they decided their rulers should give up personal happiness to protect everyone else. It sounds harsh, but it had worked for their civilization for thousands of years. Zara was good at her job. She was wise, fair, and always put her people first. She had beautiful long hair that changed colors based on her mood, and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the universe. When she walked through her palace, everyone bowed with respect. She could solve disputes just by reading people's thoughts and understanding their real feelings. But lately, something was wrong. Her advisors brought her terrible news. There was a group called the Void Syndicate spreading across the galaxy. These were the bad guys, the kind of people who conquered planets and made slaves out of anyone with special powers. They were especially interested in telepathic beings like the Aetherians, because they could use their mind-reading abilities for evil purposes. The Void Syndicate was getting closer to their part of space. It already attacked several peaceful planets, and the reports were frightening. They didn't just take over planets, they destroyed cultures and enslaved entire populations. Zara knew that if they came to Aetherios Prime, her people wouldn't stand a chance with their current defenses. For the first time in her 1,000-year reign, Zara felt truly afraid. Not for herself, but for her people. The Aetherians were peaceful. They had focused so much on developing their mental abilities that they had never built a strong military. They could defend themselves against small threats, but the Void Syndicate was like nothing they had ever faced. Zara spent sleepless nights in her crystal tower, looking out at the stars and trying to find a solution. She could see the worry in her people's minds. Parents were scared for their children. Young people wondered if they would live to see old age. The weight of their fear pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Her council of advisors met every day, but they couldn't agree on what to do. Some wanted to try hiding the planet using their advanced technology. Others suggested surrendering immediately to avoid a war they couldn't win. A few brave voices suggested reaching out to other species for help, but this was almost unthinkable. The Aetherians had always been proud of their independence. After weeks of debate, Zara made a decision that shocked everyone. She would ask for help from the humans. Earth had something the Aetherians didn't have, a strong military with centuries of experience in warfare. Humans might not have telepathic powers, but they knew how to fight and win battles. This decision was controversial. Many Aetherians looked down on humans as a younger, less evolved species. They thought humans were too violent and emotional. Some council members argued that bringing human soldiers to their peaceful planet would be like inviting wolves into a garden of sheep. But Zara knew she had to try. She had spent 1,000 years protecting her people, and she wasn't going to let them be destroyed by the Void Syndicate. She sent a message across space to Earth, asking for military advisors to help prepare her planet for war. The message traveled through space for days before reaching Earth. When human leaders received it, they were surprised. The Etherians had never asked for help before. They'd always kept to themselves, mysterious and distant. But the humans also knew about the Void Syndicate and understood the threat they posed to all peaceful civilizations. After much discussion, Earth's military decided to send a small team of their best soldiers to Ethereos Prime. They would serve as advisors, teaching the Etherians how to defend themselves. It would seem like a simple mission, but none of them knew that this decision would change everything. As Zara waited for the human soldiers to arrive, she felt something strange happening inside her. The sacred vow that had bound her for so long felt different somehow. Not broken, but strained, like a rope that was being pulled too tight. She dismissed these feelings as stress from the approaching war, but deep down, she sensed that her perfectly ordered world was about to be turned upside down. The day the human ship appeared in their sky, every Etherian felt the change coming. They didn't know it yet, but their queen was about to meet someone who would challenge everything she believed about duty, sacrifice, and love. The sacred vow that had protected her heart for 1,000 years was about to face its greatest test. But even as he said it, Jake knew his teammate was right. This was becoming more than a professional relationship, and that was dangerous for both of them. He had read about the sacred vow and the briefing materials Earth had prepared. He knew that Zara was bound by ancient laws that prevented her from forming personal attachments. Still, he couldn't help but admire her strength and wisdom. She carried the weight of an entire civilization on her shoulders, yet she remained graceful and kind. When she smiled, which happened more often when he was around, it was like watching a sunrise. When she was worried about her people, he wanted to do everything in his power to help her. Zara was experiencing feelings she had never felt before. The sacred vow had suppressed her ability to form romantic attachments for so long that she didn't even recognize what was happening at first. She just knew that being around Jake made her feel more alive than she had in centuries. The Etherian High Council began to notice changes in their queen. Her telepathic abilities seemed less stable. During important ceremonies, her mind would wander. She was making decisions based on emotions rather than pure logic, which was completely unlike her usual style of leadership. "Your Majesty," the eldest council member said during a private meeting, "we're concerned about the influence these humans are having on you. Perhaps it would be wise to limit your direct contact with them." Zara's response surprised everyone, including herself. "Captain Rivers and his team are essential to our defense. I will continue to work with them as closely as necessary." The council members exchanged worried glances. They could sense something in their queen's mind that hadn't been there before, something that threatened the very foundations of their society. Meanwhile, Jake was facing his own internal battle. He was a professional soldier, trained to complete missions without getting emotionally involved. But every day he spent with Zara made it harder to maintain that professional distance. She was brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than anyone he had ever met. Late at night, Jake would walk through the palace gardens, trying to clear his head. The beauty of Ethereos Prime was overwhelming, but it was nothing compared to the complexity of his feelings for its queen. He knew that pursuing these feelings could destroy everything they were trying to build. But fate seemed determined to push them together. The Void Syndicate was moving faster than expected, and the urgency of their situation meant Jake and Zara had to spend even more time together. Every shared glance, every moment of understanding between them, made the inevitable confrontation. With destiny draw closer, neither of them knew that the sacred vow, which had held firm for 1,000 years, was beginning to crack under the pressure of emotions too strong to contain. The real test was still to come. The emergency alarm echoed through the Crystal Palace at dawn, shattering the peaceful morning on Ethereos Prime. Zara rushed to the command center, her heart pounding as she saw the urgent reports flooding in from the outer colonies. The Void Syndicate had arrived 3 days earlier than expected, and their attack was already underway. "They hit Colony 7 first," reported Commander Thane, the head of Etherian Defense Forces. "The settlement is completely cut off. We're getting scattered distress signals, but most communication has been blocked." Jake stood beside the holographic display, studying the enemy positions with the sharp focus of an experienced soldier. "This is a classic pincer movement," he said, pointing to the tactical map. "They're not just trying to conquer, they're trying to trap civilians so you can't evacuate them." Zara felt the fear of her people washing over her through their telepathic connection. Thousands of Etherians were sending out mental cries for help, and she could feel every one of them like a knife in her heart. Among them were children, elderly citizens, and families who had never experienced violence in their peaceful lives. "We need to organize an immediate evacuation," Zara declared. "I won't let innocent people become prisoners of the Syndicate." Jake nodded grimly. "I'll take my team and coordinate the rescue operation. But Your Majesty, this is going to be dangerous. Syndicate doesn't take prisoners they can't use. Anyone who resists... ... double quotes. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood what the Void Syndicate did to those who stood in their way. The reports from other conquered worlds painted a terrifying picture of their methods. Within hours, a mixed force of human soldiers and Etherian defenders was racing toward the attacked colony in fast transport ships. Zara insisted on joining the mission despite the protests of her council. She couldn't sit safely in her palace, while her people were in danger. The scene at Colony 7 was worse than anyone had imagined. The beautiful settlement, known for its singing crystal gardens, was now partially destroyed. Strange black ships hovered over the area like giant insects, and figures in dark armor moved through the streets, rounding up civilians. "The Syndicate soldiers are using some kind of telepathic blockers," Zara whispered to Jake as they observed from their hidden position. "I can barely sense my people's thoughts. It's like they're trapped behind a wall of silence," Jake studied. "The enemy positions through his tactical scope. They've learned from other conquests. They know how to neutralize telepathic species. But they haven't dealt with a combined human-Etherian force before. The rescue operation began at sunset." Jake's team moved with military precision, while the Etherian defenders used their remaining telepathic abilities to coordinate silent attacks. For a few hours, everything went according to plan. They managed to evacuate hundreds of civilians, leading them to safety through hidden forest paths. But then disaster struck. A group of Syndicate soldiers had set a trap near the main evacuation point. As Jake led a group of Etherian children toward the transport ships, enemy fire erupted from the surrounding hills. The children screamed in terror as energy blasts lit up the darkening sky. Without thinking, Jake threw himself between the children and the attacking soldiers. He had faced enemy fire countless times in his military career, but this felt different. These weren't just any civilians he was protecting. They were Zara's people. The thought of their queen's pain if anything happened to them drove him to act with desperate courage. The first energy blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second hit his chest, and he fell to his knees, still trying to shield the children behind him. Blood began to stain his uniform as he struggled to stay conscious. "Captain," one of his team members shouted, returning fire at the Syndicate soldiers. Zara sensed Jake's pain through their growing connection before she even saw what had happened. A wave of anguish washed over her that was stronger than anything she had felt in her 1,000 years of life. She abandoned her position and ran toward the sound of battle, her mind focused on only one thing. When she found Jake, he was lying motionless on the ground, his breathing shallow and labored. The Etherian children he had protected were safely behind cover, but they were crying and reaching toward their fallen protector. Zara dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she checked his wounds. "Jake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." For a moment, Jake's eyes opened and focused on her face. "The children," he managed to say, "are they safe?" "Yes," Zara said, tears streaming down her face. "They're safe because of you." As Jake's eyes closed again, something inside Zara snapped. The emotion she had been fighting for weeks suddenly exploded with the force of 1,000 years of suppressed feelings. She loved this brave, selfless human who had risked everything to protect her people. She loved him more than her crown, more than her vows, more than the traditions that had bound her for so long. In that moment of overwhelming emotion, the sacred vow that had controlled her life for a millennium finally broke. The ancient bonds that had been woven into her very being dissolved like ice and fire. The telepathic shockwave that followed was felt by every Etherian on the planet. The experience was like a mental earthquake. Etherians across the planet suddenly felt their queen's love, her fear, her desperate need to save the human who had captured her heart. Some of them collapsed from the intensity of the emotion. Others cried out in confusion, never having experienced such powerful feelings through their telepathic connection. In the royal palace, several members of the High Council fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the psychic storm. The eldest council member, who had served the crown for 5 centuries, looked up at the sky with tears in his ancient eyes. "It's broken," he whispered. "The sacred vow is broken. Our queen has chosen love over duty." Back at the battle site, Zara was unaware of the chaos her emotional breakthrough had caused. She was focused entirely on Jake, using her newly freed powers to stabilize his injuries and keep him alive. The medical team arrived within minutes, working frantically to save the human captain who had become so important to their queen. As Jake was rushed to the emergency medical facility, Zara walked through the rescued civilians, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done. The Etherian children ran to her, their small arms wrapping around her legs as they tried to comfort their queen. "Your Majesty," one of the little girls said, looking up at her with wide eyes. "The brave soldier saved us. Will he be okay?" Zara knelt down to the child's level, managing a gentle smile despite her tears. "He will be okay," she said softly. "I promise you that." But even as she spoke those words, Zara knew that nothing would ever be the same. The vow that had defined her reign was broken, and she could already sense the political storm that was brewing. Some of her people would see this as a betrayal of everything they held sacred. Others might understand that love had given her new strength. The next few days would determine not just Jake's fate, but the future of the entire Etherian civilization. The Void Syndicate was still approaching. And now their queen would have to lead them into battle while dealing with the consequences of choosing her heart over ancient law. As she held vigil beside Jake's medical bed, Zara realized that breaking the sacred vow hadn't made her weaker. Instead, it had awakened something inside her that she never knew existed. The question now was whether her people would accept this new version of their queen, or whether her choice would tear their civilization apart just when they needed unity most. Jake opened his eyes 3 days later to find Zara sitting beside his hospital bed, her hand gently holding his. The medical facility was unlike anything on Earth, with walls that seemed to glow with soft healing light and machines that hummed with peaceful energy. But what surprised him most was the change he could see in Zara's eyes. "You're awake," she said softly, and Jake could hear relief flooding her voice. "I was so worried." "The children," Jake said, his voice still weak. "Are they safe?" Zara smiled, though tears gathered in her eyes. "They're safe. All of them. They keep asking about the brave human soldier who saved them. You're quite the hero to them." Jake tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his chest. "What happened while I was unconscious? I can sense something's different." Zara looked down at their joined hands. "Everything's different, Jake. The sacred vow is broken. When I thought I might lose you, I realized that some things are more important than ancient rules. My people felt it happen, all of them, across the entire planet." The implications of her words slowly sank in. Jake had read about the sacred vow in the briefing materials. He knew what it meant for Etherian society. "Zara, what does this mean for your reign, for your people?" Before she could answer, the medical facility's doors burst open. Commander Thane rushed in, his face grave with urgent news. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but we have a situation." "The Void Syndicate's main fleet has been spotted. They'll be here within 2 days." Jake immediately tried to get out of bed, but Zara gently pushed him back down. "You're not fully healed yet." "I'm healed enough," Jake insisted. "If they're coming, we need to be ready." What none of them expected was what had happened to Zara since the vow broke. That evening, as they held an emergency council meeting, something extraordinary occurred. Zara was trying to coordinate with her military commanders when she suddenly felt Jake's thoughts as clearly as if he had spoken aloud. The high ground positions would be better for defense, Jake was thinking, studying the tactical display. Zara looked at him in surprise. "You think the northern mountains would give us a better advantage?" Jake stared at her. "I didn't say that out loud." "No," Zara whispered, wonder in her voice. "But I heard you thinking it." The council members exchanged amazed glances. This was unprecedented. No Etherian had ever been able to read human thoughts so clearly before, and certainly not across species boundaries. Over the next several hours, they discovered that breaking the sacred vow had done more than just free Zara's heart. It had unleashed telepathic abilities beyond anything seen in Etherian history.
Ouch.
She could now connect not just with her own people, but with humans as well. The artificial barriers that had constrained her powers for 1,000 years were gone. This changes everything, Jake said, his military mind already working through the possibilities. If you can link human and Etherian minds during battle, we could coordinate like never before. They spent the night testing this new ability. Zara formed a mental link between Jake and several Etherian commanders. Suddenly the humans could sense exactly what the Etherians were planning, while the Etherians could feel the tactical instincts that came from centuries of human military experience. The effect was incredible. Mixed teams of humans and Etherians began working together with perfect coordination. They could communicate instantly across vast distances, share strategies without speaking, and react to threats as if they were one mind with many bodies. But not everyone was happy about these developments. The next morning, a group of traditional Etherian nobles demanded an audience with their queen. Their leader, Lord Cain, had served the crown for 3 centuries and was deeply disturbed by recent events. "Your Majesty," Lord Cain said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "you have broken the most sacred law of our people. Some of us question whether you can still lead us effectively." Zara stood tall, her new powers making her seem even more regal than before. "I understand your concerns, Lord Cain, but I ask, you two judge me by results, not by rules. The Void Syndicate is coming, and we need every advantage we can get." "These humans have corrupted you," another noble accused. "You've abandoned your duty to our people for the sake of personal feelings." Jake started to stand, anger flashing in his eyes, but Zara held up a hand to stop him. "No one has corrupted me," she said firmly. "I've simply discovered that love makes us stronger, not weaker. Watch what we can accomplish together." To prove her point, Zara established a telepathic connection with everyone in the room. Suddenly, the traditional nobles could feel the courage and determination of the human soldiers. They could sense Jake's genuine care for the Etherian people and his willingness to die protecting them. At the same time, the humans felt the deep wisdom and peaceful strength of the Etherians. The experience lasted only a few moments, but it changed everything. Lord Cain's stern expression softened as he realized that the humans weren't invaders or corruptors, but genuine allies who had come to help save their world. I apologize, Your Majesty," Lord Cain said quietly. "I had not understood the depth of this bond." With the political crisis resolved, they turned their attention to the approaching battle. The Void Syndicate's main fleet was massive, with ships that looked like dark metal insects spreading across the starfield. Intelligence reports suggested they had enough firepower to destroy the entire planet if they chose to.
"You're not
just trying to conquer us," Jake explained to the gathered commanders. "They want to capture as many telepathic individuals as possible for their own purposes. That means they'll try to take prisoners rather than simply destroying everything." Zara nodded, her enhanced abilities already reaching out to sense the enemy's intentions. "I can feel their commanders' thoughts at the edge of my range. They're confident, maybe overconfident. They think we're just another peaceful planet that will surrender without a real fight." The wedding ceremony took place. That very evening, just hours before the final battle was set to begin, it wasn't the grand celebration that either culture might have traditionally expected, but it was perfect in its simplicity. They held it in the royal gardens, with the approaching enemy fleet visible as threatening dots in the star-filled sky. Zara wore a simple white gown that seemed to glow with its own inner light, while Jake stood beside her in his dress uniform, still bearing the bandages from his recent wounds. Representatives from both species witnessed the ceremony, human military personnel standing alongside Etherian nobles. The vows they exchanged were brief but heartfelt. "I promise to stand with you," Zara said, "through whatever comes, whether in peace or war." "I promise to protect you and your people," Jake replied, "with everything I have, for as long as I live." As they kissed to seal their union, Every Etherean present felt the pure joy and love flowing between them. It was a moment of perfect harmony between two very different species, and it gave everyone hope for what they could accomplish together. But even as they celebrated, the enemy fleet was moving into position. The final battle for Ethereos Prime would begin at dawn, and everything they had worked for would be put to the ultimate test. The newlywed couple stood together on the palace balcony, looking up at the stars and preparing for the fight of their lives. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Zara said softly, "I want you to know that choosing love over duty was the best decision I ever made." Jake squeezed her hand. "We're going to win this, Zara. Your people and mine, fighting together. The Void Syndicate has never faced anything like what we've built here." As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. The final battle began as the twin suns of Ethereos Prime rose above the horizon. The Void Syndicate fleet had spread across the sky like a dark cloud, their massive ships blocking out sections of the morning light. But something was different about this fight. For the first time in galactic history, humans and Etherians were fighting together as one unified force. Zara and Jake stood side by side on the command bridge of the royal palace, their minds linked not just to each other, but to every soldier on the battlefield. Through Zara's enhanced telepathic abilities, human pilots could feel exactly where Etherian ground forces needed air support. Etherian defenders knew instantly when human troops needed backup. It was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance of war. "Syndicate fighters approaching from the eastern sector," reported Captain Hayes, one of Jake's fellow humans. But even as he spoke the words aloud, every defender already knew through their mental connection. "I've got them," responded Commander Luna, an Etherian pilot whose ship moved with impossible grace through the sky. Through the telepathic link, she could feel the human pilot's tactical instincts guiding her movements. The Void Syndicate had never faced anything like this before. They were used to conquering divided planets where different species fought separately, often getting in each other's way. But the combined human-Etherian force moved like a single organism, each part supporting the others perfectly. "Their coordination is impossible," snarled General Vex, the Syndicate commander. As he watched his forces struggle against the unified defense, "How are they communicating so quickly?" What General Vex didn't understand was that Zara's broken vow had created something entirely new. Her love for Jake had unlocked telepathic abilities that bridged the gap between species. Every human soldier could feel the peaceful wisdom of the Etherians, while every Etherian defender gained access to centuries of human military experience. The battle raged for hours. Syndicate ground forces tried to establish landing zones, but coordinated human-Etherian teams drove them back again and again. When enemy ships attempted to break through the planet's defenses, Etherian mental powers guided human missiles with perfect accuracy. Jake found himself amazed by what they had accomplished. "Zara, can you sense what's happening across the entire battlefield?" "Every detail," she replied, her eyes glowing with concentration. "I can feel our people's courage, their determination to protect their homes. But I can also sense the enemy's confusion. They don't understand how we're working together so effectively." The turning point came when the Syndicate tried their most devastating attack. General Vex ordered all remaining ships to focus there. Firepower on the capital city, hoping to force a quick surrender. The combined energy blast was powerful enough to destroy entire mountains, but Zara was ready. Through her connection with every defender, she coordinated a response that no single species could have managed alone. Etherian mental powers created a protective barrier around the city, while human technology amplified and strengthened that barrier. The enemy's attack struck the shield like lightning hitting a mountain and scattered harmlessly into the atmosphere. "Impossible," General Vex shouted. "No planetary defense should be able to stop that much firepower." "Maybe that's because you've never fought a planet where love makes people stronger instead of weaker," Jake said through the communication channel, his words reaching every ship in the enemy fleet. The psychological impact of that moment was enormous. Syndicate forces began to retreat, their morale broken by the realization that they were fighting something beyond their understanding. Within hours, the entire enemy fleet was fleeing back into deep space, defeated not just by superior tactics but by the power of unity. as the last enemy ship disappeared from their sensors. A cheer went up across the planet. Human and Etherian. Voices joined together in celebration, their joy shared through the telepathic network that connected them all. Children ran through the streets, elderly Etherians embraced human soldiers, and families celebrated together regardless of which species they belonged to. 6 months later, Etherios Prime had become something entirely new. The rigid traditions that had defined Etherian society for thousands of years were evolving into something more flexible and inclusive. The palace that had once been a place of formal ceremonies now hosted regular gatherings where humans and Etherians shared stories, food, and friendship. Jake had adapted to his role as prince consort better than anyone expected. His military experience proved invaluable in establishing new defense agreements with Earth and other peaceful planets. But more importantly, his genuine respect for Etherian culture had helped bridge the gap between two very different civilizations. The Galactic Council wants to send a delegation to study what we've accomplished here, Jake told Zara as they walked through the royal gardens one evening. Apparently news of our success has spread to dozens of other worlds. Zara smiled, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. Good. Maybe other species will learn that cooperation is stronger than conquest. The pregnancy had been confirmed just weeks earlier, and the news had sent waves of excitement throughout both civilizations. Medical examinations revealed that their child would inherit enhanced versions of both human and Etherian abilities. The baby would be able to form telepathic connections like an Etherian, but also possess the adaptability and determination that characterized humans. Have you thought about what this means for the galaxy? Jake asked, placing his hand over hers. Our child won't just be human or Etherian. It'll be something new. Something that could help unite different species across the stars. I've been thinking about it constantly, Zara admitted. For 1,000 years I believed that isolation and duty were the keys to strength. But love has taught me that our greatest power comes from connection, from caring about others and working together. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lord Kane, who had become one of their strongest supporters since witnessing the power of their bond. Your Majesties, the Earth delegation has arrived for the signing ceremony. The ceremony he referred to was historic. For the first time in galactic history, two species were officially merging their governments, creating a joint council where humans and Etherians would make decisions together. Other planets were already requesting similar partnerships, inspired by the success they had witnessed. As they made their way to the Great Hall, Zara reflected on how much had changed. The scared, lonely queen who had sent that first message to Earth seemed like a different person now. Breaking the sacred vow hadn't destroyed her ability to lead. It had transformed her into a leader who ruled through love rather than duty alone. The signing ceremony was attended by representatives from dozens of worlds. As Zara and Jake placed their signatures on the historic agreement, they knew they were witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic politics. This partnership proves that love doesn't make us weak. Zara addressed the gathered delegates. It makes us stronger than we ever imagined possible. When different species work together, with trust and respect, there's no challenge we can't overcome. As the ceremony concluded and the celebrations began, Jake and Zara stepped out onto the palace balcony where they had first realized their feelings for each other. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors that seemed to celebrate their journey from duty-bound loneliness to a love that had changed the galaxy. Do you ever regret it? Jake asked quietly, giving up 1,000 years of tradition for this. As Zara looked out at the city below, where humans and Etherians were celebrating together in the streets. She could sense their happiness through her telepathic abilities, feel their hope for the future, and know that their children would grow up in a world where cooperation was valued over conquest. Never, she said firmly. The sacred vow taught me duty, but love taught me wisdom. Sometimes the greatest service we can provide to our people is showing them that there's a better way to live. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, both of them knew that their story was really just the beginning. Their child would grow up in a galaxy where different species worked together, where love was seen as a source of strength rather than weakness, and where the barriers between worlds were falling one by one. The alien queen, who had broken her 1,000-year vow of celibacy, had discovered something more powerful than any ancient law. She had found that love, rather than isolating us, connects us to something greater than ourselves. And in that connection, both she and the galaxy had found a new kind of strength that would endure for generations to come.